could not bear to see me succeed. Your own wife? You were supposed to be happy for me.
I was.
No, you were happy when I was struggling.
The village of Usenge was about to witness the biggest betrayal of a husband to his successful wife. The village of Usenge was a small village in Bondo constituency, covered in green fields on rich earth and mud huts scattered in between the fields. Every morning sun climbed over the hills like a shy child peeking through a doorway. In Usenge, everybody knew everybody. If a goat sneezed in one homestead, 3 villagers would know about it before lunch. If a young man bought a new pair of shoes, the village women would know the price before he reached his doorstep. And if somebody got married, people who had never even attended the wedding would still have strong opinions about the quality of the bride's cooking. It was a peaceful place most of the time, except when politics, football, land boundaries, or family disagreements entered the conversation. And there was one man in Usenge who had a particularly large opinion of himself. His name was Odongo or Juang. Odongo was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a thick mustache that he groomed every morning with the seriousness of a government official signing an important document. He walked with his chest pushed forward and his stomach slightly ahead of him, as if his belly had been elected village chairman and the rest of his body was merely accompanying it. Odongo believed he was an important man. Unfortunately, the village had never formally agreed with him. He was not a poor man, but he was not rich either. He owned 3 cows, 2 goats, a small plot of maize, and an ancient motorcycle that coughed more often than it moved. He had once worked as a storekeeper in a hardware shop in town, but after the owner accused him of spending too much time drinking tea during working hours, Odongo returned to Usenge and announced that he had resigned because he was destined for bigger things. Nobody knew what those bigger things were yet. Even Odongo did not know, but he spoke about them frequently. His wife, Achieng, was the complete opposite. Where Odongo talked, Achieng worked. Where Odongo dreamed, Achieng planned. Where Odongo waited for opportunities, Achieng created them. She was a warm-hearted woman with bright, observant eyes and a smile that seemed to arrive before she did. She was a devout Christian and woke up to pray every morning at 4 a.m. For 12 years, she had stood beside her husband through thick and thin. She had supported him when money was scarce. She had sold vegetables to pay their kids' school fees. She had raised their children almost alone. She had even contributed money when Odongo bought his beloved motorcycle. And whenever visitors came, Achieng praised her husband. "My husband is a hard-working man," she would say. Odongo would sit nearby, rubbing his mustache proudly. But there was one thing Achieng did not know. Odongo did not like being married to a woman who was better at things than he was. At first, it was merely small irritation. Then it became a big thorn. Eventually, it became a poisonous seed growing quietly inside him. It all began with food. One Saturday morning, Achieng was sitting beneath the shade of an enormous mango tree, sorting beans into a woven basket. Her youngest daughter, Akoth, was beside her. "Mother," the girl said, "your food is amazing. Why don't you sell it? I think people would love it." Achieng laughed. "My cooking? Yes, everybody that tastes it loves it." Achieng shook her head. "People just love free food, even when it doesn't taste great." Akoth giggled. "Well, yours tastes great." Akoth said nothing, but the idea remained. That evening, Achieng cooked a large pot of her famous beef stew, soft chapatis, spicy samosas, and smoky beans. When the neighbors came to borrow salt, they smelled the food. One neighbor asked for a plate. Another came to return a saucepan that had actually been missing for 3 months. By the time dinner was served, half the village seemed to have discovered urgent reasons to visit Achieng's house. The next morning, old Mama Awino came knocking. "Achieng," she said, "I have a suggestion." Achieng looked suspicious. "About what?" "About your food." "What about it?" You should start selling it. Achieng laughed. To whom? To us. That was how it started. Achieng borrowed a small wooden table from her cousin and set it beside the main road. She placed steaming containers of food on it. There was beef stew, fried fish, beans, chapatis, mandazi, samosas, and her special spicy chicken. She called the little business Mama Achieng's Kitchen. On the first day, she sold everything. On the second day, she sold everything before noon. By the third week, people from neighboring villages were coming. Within 3 months, Mama Achieng's Kitchen had become the busiest food business in Usenge. Workers came for lunch, teachers came after school, motorcycle riders stopped there, farmers came after market. Even the local chief occasionally appeared, pretending he was only passing by. Achieng's little wooden table became a proper food stall. Then the food stall became a small restaurant. Then the restaurant acquired painted walls, benches, tables, colorful curtains, and a large sign that proudly announced Mama Achieng's Kitchen. Good food, good hearts. And Usenge loved it. People praised Achieng everywhere they went. That woman can cook. She is generous and kind. She employs young people. She pays her workers very well and on time. She even gives food to old people who cannot afford it. The more successful Achieng became, the more Odongo smiled in public. He told everyone he was proud of his wife. My wife is a very hard-working woman, he announced whenever somebody praised her. But when he returned home, his smile disappeared. One evening, he sat on the veranda while Achieng counted money. How much did you make today? He asked casually. Achieng smiled. Enough to pay the workers and buy more supplies. Odongo grunted. That is good. Yes. She continued counting. Odongo watched her intently. He noticed something he did not like. She was happy. Not merely happy, confident too. People tended to listen when she spoke. Her customers respected her. Young women came to her for advice. Farmers asked her about business. Even men who once ignored Odongo now greeted Achieng with exaggerated respect. One afternoon, Odongo went to the village meeting. The chief stood up. Before we continue, he said, let us appreciate Mama Achieng for sponsoring the new benches at the community center. Everyone clapped. Odongo clapped too, but his palms barely touched. He looked around him. People were genuinely smiling. Achieng sat near the front, embarrassed by the attention. The chief continued, she has also promised to provide lunch for the children's football tournament. More applause. Odongo's jaw tightened. Then an old man shouted jokingly, Odongo, you are now the husband of a famous woman. Everyone laughed out loud. Odongo forced a laugh, but deep inside him he was furious. On the walk home, he muttered under his breath, famous woman indeed. He kicked a stone. I'll show you, famous woman. Another stone. By the time he reached home, he had convinced himself that his wife's success was somehow a personal insult. That night, Achieng placed a plate of food in front of him, then held his hand and said a prayer. Eat. Odongo looked at the food. What is this? Beef stew. From the restaurant? Yes. He pushed the plate away. You have changed. Achieng looked at him in surprise. Changed how? You are always busy and you're hardly home. I am working. You think money is everything now and you don't care about your family. I never said that. You don't listen to me anymore. Achieng stared at him. Odongo, when did you last tell me something I wasn't already doing? He frowned. She continued gently. When the business was struggling, you told me to close it. I was only being realistic. When customers increased, you said it was temporary. I was warning you. When I hired workers, you said I was wasting money. I was protecting you. And now that the business is doing well, she stopped. Odongo looked away. Achieng sighed. I don't know what you want from me. Odongo stood. "I just want my wife back." Achieng looked at him sadly. "I am still your wife. I'm here. I never left." But Odongo had already walked away. The next morning, he decided something. If he could not become more successful than Achieng, then perhaps he could make her less successful than himself. He hatched a plan, and he began quietly. The first thing he did was convince a supplier to delay deliveries. "She has too much stock," Odongo told him. "Don't worry, she won't even notice." Then he secretly damaged one of the restaurant's cooking stoves. He loosened a pipe. Then he hid some important receipts. He even told one of Achieng's workers that she was planning to reduce his wages. The worker became angry. Achieng noticed the tension and investigated. She discovered nothing. Odongo always appeared beside her with concerned eyes. "My wife," he would say, "I don't know why these problems keep happening." Then he would shake his head dramatically. "You work too hard. What can I do to help?" Achieng would sigh. "I don't know what I would do without you." Those words made Odongo feel powerful, but they also made him feel ashamed. So he sabotaged more. One afternoon, he poured an unpleasant-smelling liquid into a container of cooking oil. The next morning, the food tasted strange. Customers complained. Achieng was devastated. "I don't understand," she whispered. She tasted the stew. Her face fell in confusion as she spat it out. "This is not right," she said to her cook. For the first time in months, customers began leaving. Rumors spread through the village. Maybe Mama Achieng's food is no longer good. Maybe she has become careless. Success has changed her. Odongo heard the rumors and pretended to be heartbroken. He stood beside his wife. He even prayed with her. "Don't worry," he told her. "We'll get through this." Achieng leaned against his shoulder. For a moment, Odongo felt terrible. He almost confessed. Almost. But then someone walked past and said, "Poor Odongo, his wife's business is collapsing." Odongo's eyes hardened, and the poisonous seed inside him grew another root. Then came the biggest sabotage of all. Achieng had been preparing for the largest catering contract her business had ever received. A construction company from a nearby town wanted food for more than 200 workers. If she succeeded, she would have enough money to expand the restaurant. She was thrilled. She spent days preparing. She bought sacks of rice, boxes of tomatoes, fresh vegetables, meat, cooking oil, spices, everything. The night before delivery, Achieng checked the storeroom. Everything was ready. She smiled. "We're going to make it." Odongo stood in the doorway. "Yes," he said quietly, "you are." After she went to bed, he entered the storeroom. He looked at the ingredients. For a moment, he hesitated. His hands trembled. Then he remembered the villagers applauding his wife. He remembered the chief praising her. He remembered the old man joking that he was merely the husband of a famous woman. His jealousy returned like a hungry fire. Odongo opened several sacks and mixed spoiled food into the supplies. Then he took the invoice containing the delivery details and tore it into pieces. He walked back to bed, but he did not sleep. His heart pounded. The next morning was chaos. The restaurant workers discovered the ruined ingredients. The delivery details were missing. The kitchen was in confusion. Achieng looked as if somebody had taken the ground from beneath her feet. She said, "We have to fix this." Her workers scrambled. The villagers who heard about the problem came to help. Mama Awino brought vegetables. A farmer brought fresh meat. Another woman brought rice. Young men rode motorcycles to town to buy supplies. The entire village rallied around Achieng. Odongo stood outside, watching, and something unexpected happened. Instead of feeling triumphant, he felt small, very small, because he realized something painful. Achieng had built something he could not destroy. She had not merely built a business, she had built relationships. She had earned trust. She had helped people. She had become part of the village. But the village was not finished. That afternoon, the chief called an emergency village meeting. Someone had discovered that several important business documents had been deliberately destroyed and stashed behind the restaurant under an old water pot. And there was another problem. One of Achieng's workers had found something strange. A scrap of paper. A torn piece of paper with plans written on it. It had been discovered near Odongo's motorcycle helmet. The village became silent. The chief held it up. Does anyone recognize this handwriting? Achieng looked at the paper, then at Odongo. Odongo's face became pale. I don't know anything about that. The chief frowned. Are you sure? Of course. Then Mama Awino stood. I saw Odongo near the storeroom last night. Odongo stared at her. You old woman. Mama Awino raised an eyebrow. Old? Yes. Blind? No. The villagers laughed. Odongo's face reddened. Then one of Achieng's workers stepped forward. Mama Achieng, he said, there is something else. He pulled out his phone. I recorded something yesterday. The villagers gathered around. The worker played the recording. Odongo's voice filled the air. Make sure the delivery is delayed. Silence. Odongo looked around. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. The recording continued. She thinks she's better than everyone now. A gasp moved through the crowd. Achieng covered her mouth. She looked at her husband as if seeing a stranger. Odongo. He lowered his head. The chief spoke quietly. Is that your voice? Odongo swallowed and looked down. Yes. The village erupted. People shouted. Some were angry. Others were disappointed. One man whispered, how could he do this to his own wife? Achieng did not shout. That made it even worse. She simply stood there, tears running silently down her cheeks. Odongo, she said, why? I could have forgiven poverty. He looked up. I could have forgiven mistakes. Her voice trembled. I could even have forgiven you for telling me my business would fail. She wiped her tears. But you could not bear to see me succeed. Your own wife? Odongo's shoulders dropped. Achieng continued. Why? Odongo looked at the ground. Because, he struggled to speak, because everyone respected you. Achieng stared at him. And you thought they could only respect one of us? He said nothing. You were supposed to be happy for me. I was. No. Her voice became firmer. You were happy when I was struggling. The words struck him harder than any slap. The village became silent. Achieng looked at the people around her. I honestly thought my husband would be the first person to celebrate when I succeeded. She turned back to Odongo. But he became the person I had to fear. Odongo's eyes filled with tears. For the first time in his life, he had nothing clever to say. No excuse, no speech, no explanation. Only shame. The chief stood. Odongo, he said, you did not lose your wife's respect because she succeeded. He paused. You lost it because you could not celebrate her success. Nobody spoke. The chief looked around the gathering. A marriage is not a race where one person must finish ahead of the other. He pointed toward Achieng. When your spouse rises, you rise too. Then he pointed towards Odongo. When your spouse succeeds, you should feel as if your own family has succeeded. Odongo lowered his head. Achieng walked away. That evening, the restaurant was strangely quiet. Achieng sat alone beneath the mango tree where she had first dreamed of starting the business. She remembered the little wooden table, the first chapatis, the first customer, the first day she sold everything. She remembered Odongo sitting beside her when they had almost nothing, holding her hand as she prayed, and she wondered when the man she loved had become her enemy. Odongo found her there. He stood several meters away. "Acheng," she did not answer. "I'm sorry." She looked at him. "Sorry for what?" He swallowed. "Everything." She looked away. "I don't know if sorry will ever be enough." "I know." "I trusted you, Odongo." "I know." "You were supposed to protect my back." Odongo nodded. "I know." Instead, he had been the knife hidden behind it. He sat down several feet away. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Odongo said something that surprised her. "I was afraid." Acheng looked at him. "Afraid?" "Yes." "Of me?" He shook his head. "Of becoming nobody." Acheng remained silent. Odongo stared at his hands. "I thought if people respected you more, they would stop respecting me." His voice cracked. "I thought your success made me look small." Acheng sighed. "You made yourself small." Odongo nodded slowly. "Now I understand that." For the first time, he admitted it. The next morning, something unexpected happened. Odongo arrived at Mama Acheng's kitchen before sunrise. He picked up a broom. One of the workers stared at him. "What are you doing?" "Cleaning." The worker looked in bewilderment. "Why?" Odongo sighed. "Because apparently I have a lot of work to do." The worker laughed. Soon others joined him. Odongo cleaned tables, he repaired the broken stove, he replaced damaged equipment, he apologized to the suppliers, and most importantly, he admitted publicly what he had done. Not once, not twice, everywhere. He went to the chief, he went to the workers, he went to the customers. He told them the truth. Some forgave him, some did not. Acheng took longer, much longer, but slowly, painfully, something began to change. Odongo learned that supporting someone did not make him smaller. Acheng learned that forgiveness did not mean forgetting. And the village learned a lesson that would be repeated for years. Because in Usenge, people still talked. They talked about Odongo, they talked about Acheng, they talked about jealousy, they talked about marriage, and they talked especially about the day Odongo had tried to destroy his wife's business, only to discover that he had been destroying his own dignity. My friends, if you made it to the end of this story, thank you for staying with me. If you haven't already done so, kindly hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you never miss another interesting tale like this one. And right now, there's another amazing story waiting for you on your screen. Believe me, you don't want to miss it. See you on the next one.